What is the policy on a restaurant being next to a church and alcohol being served in that restaurant?
Yes, sir. Did have a chance to talk to county staff about that, and the regulations from talking to code enforcement are 300 feet between the building and the proposed building. So if you look at this particular map, the church itself is about 250 feet away from the property line, and the applicants are proposing to put their particular building at the very southern portion of this lot. So if you take the 250 feet and then use the survey in this measurement here, which I thought I was going to be able to read, and that measurement is 400 feet. So if you use that, then they exceed that 300 feet distance. Now I can tell you that the alcohol permitting process has not been completed. There are other things that go along with that, with background checks and just different types of information. So that's something that will go before the Board of Commissioners if necessary at a later date. But distance alone, I did verify that distance at 300 feet between buildings.
Any other questions from staff?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Reading the verbiage in the request, the staff commented that it was inconsistent with the future map and consistent with goals and policies.
Yes,
I would like you to expound on the reasoning for that, and also looking at the future development map, it has residential. Do you foresee this area changing along that?
When I looked at the future development map, and when I look at this particular case, the future development map in this portion was made.
Mr. Denver, excuse me.
I'm sorry. Was made back in 2006. That's as far back as I've verified it. I could go back further, but essentially when I see the future development map and I hear of a proposed idea that I think could be beneficial, then I look at the goals and policies and think, truly, is it going to be something that could be positive for the area or negative for the area? I don't always go with the future development map because I know the people who prepared that map, and they're not perfect, and they can't see into the future, and we've had some good ideas come through that map didn't depict. So I think that puts extra emphasis on the applicants in making sure that they do meet some goals and policies. And I wanted to be as detailed as I could and mention out specifically which goals and policies I thought were strong. But I think in this area, what you have is you have adjacent property next to an existing commercial area that's zoned Crossroads Commercial, but it's in the City of Lake Park with Dr. Broadfoot's offices with the veterinary clinic. You also have frontage on the highway. When you have frontage on a highway on a major arterial road, I understand that residential uses on the highway might not necessarily be the best fit. And so with that being said, from a planning standpoint, I thought there was probably a choice between a larger backyard, a more dense residential development, or something that's non-residential. I think there are risks associated with the applicant's use. Some of the nuisances, the potential risk if they don't do well is there. But at this point, I thought the hurdle presented by the future development map, as well as the existing zoning and the access on the arterial, to me, gave it enough grounds for that recommendation of approval. I was not about to try to deceive y'all and tell you it was consistent with both sides of the comp plan, because it's not. I mean, it's established residential. I have a theory about why it's listed that way. But specifically, I thought this idea was worth pursuing. I think it's worth pursuing with care, but ultimately I didn't think the future development map was strong enough to disqualify it totally from consideration or approval. So, that's kind of how I got there. But if you want me to go into further detail, I can. But I think that's generally how I got to the position.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions from the commissioners? Mr. Sheriff?
You mentioned the commercial property next door.
Yes, sir.
Could you share with us if there was, you mentioned the telephone calls, et cetera, that you got, there any objections you know of from that commercial property?
No, sir. The phone calls and communications I've received were from either adjacent property owners, or residents in the area. Residents in the Lake Park, South Lowndes area. But they were not from, someone that I knew was associated with that office or someone using that office.
Do you, okay. In your rationale for recommending approval, you just feel like once you weighed both sides that it came out, the approval side, even though it was against the future development map, that's what I'm hearing, right?
Yes, sir. Ultimately, the adjacent commercial zoning and the highway frontage really were probably my two strongest factors.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions? All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Page.
based upon the fact that this is inconsistent with the future development map, number two, that there is significant residential property surrounding this subject property, and the value of this property being, the value of the property on the lake that is close to this, I make a motion that we deny this request.
Okay, we have a motion to deny the request. Do we hear a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Mr. Sherrill. All right, all in favor, if you would. Well, is there any discussion on the motion?
I would just like to state that I really have mixed emotions on this request, because I am pro-growth and pro-business. I do live in the area. I live within a mile of this property, and I can see the need for a good family restaurant in the area. And the plans and the intentions, I think, are very admirable. The case for, frankly, for approval is very strong. There's many pluses, such as the adjacent commercial zoning, the US 41 frontage, TRC approval. Owner's property state that he has and their reputation and good intentions. And it is, let's face it, the highest and best use for that parcel of land. I know if I owned that land, I'd be looking for the highest and best use for it. However, the masses are equally important to me. I think they should be noted that once rezoned, and I think several speakers stated this, that property may be resold to another owner that has less admirable intentions. And alcohol, I feel like, is the main stumbling block here. And I know it's an uncontrollable issue, but it must be considered. The property owners association, the adjacent property owners and all, at the end of the day, we have to take a side. I'm siding with the property owners on this one. I understand the NIMBY, not in my backyard. It's a reluctant second, but I think a necessary one.
Okay, any other discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed, like sign. 2 against. Okay. The motion is approved. Vote 4 to 2.